So I'm very pleased to introduce you to Andrew Kelly, who's chairman of a company who specializes in Kava. It's a Fiji-based company with Australian stock market listing, I believe, Andrew. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. Our headquarters are actually in Brisbane, but the heart and soul of the company is in Fiji on the island of Ovalau.
One question about the Kava products that are available on the market today. How variable are they?
They're fairly variable beyond a certain constraint. Kava, the plant, is widespread and well known, but within Kava there are a couple of quite key variables. The first is the provenance. Not that we know a lot about how provenance affects the production of Kava, but there is certainly a range of Pacific islands where this plant grows. Then there are varieties within regions, and more is known about that variability. But the most notable axis there is the distinction between what are called the noble varieties versus the rest, sometimes also called the two-day varieties. There is about 100 plus genuses or species, of Kava, and there are only a small number of noble and a larger number of two-day. The noble ones, especially those patronised by Fijians in Fiji, are generally considered to be the best of the Kava, and we'll get onto what best means later on, but that is another one of the variables. The final variable is extraction methodology. And traditional Kava consumption is a water extract at its essence. And yet to get better efficacy, there have been many people experimenting with or utilising acetone extraction. And those have created, I think, some issues in the market when they actually come with residues. So that is a third axis of variation that you might think of.
Are there transparent quality standards available?
Yes, there's been a lot of attempts to do that, and they're successful too, by the way. And the recent elevation of Kava into the Codex Alimentarius has actually helped hugely in, harmonising the many parties that are all simultaneously trying to get Kava standards in place. Vanuatu has an act, Fiji has an act, and those acts are definitely around standardisation and quality assurance. The common wisdom in Kava is that it's the Kava-lactone fraction that is active. And of course, as with most ethnobotanicals, there's a debate around exactly how broad that is. But if one accepts that the Kava-lactones are known to be active in the way that Kava works, then there is a profiling frequently talked about and done of HPLC fractionation of the Kava-lactone family into 6 different peaks. And believe it or not, right here on the ground, right there on the ground in Fiji, Kava traders will talk quite competently about this one is a 2,4 variety because it has a high peak in the second and fourth of these 6 peaks. And they basically, in scientific terms, they shake down into known Kava-lactone entities. So there is an attempt to standardise within the Kava-lactones, but that is not the subject of those acts you're talking about. Those acts solely deal with the total Kava-lactone content. That is the major quality standard used.
So how would a practitioner know which species is the highest quality, or that it's the same from batch to batch?
Gotcha. Yes, okay, now I've got an unsatisfactory answer for you there. And it strangely links back to traditional. And again, I'll divert, but very briefly. Traditional Kava growing is grown by planting cuttings, generally called waka, cuttings, which are one node off a stem of a Kava plant into the soil and letting it grow from the cutting. The traditional use, which is a good old redundancy in the developing world, is you put 3 or 4 cuttings in the same pile of dirt and see which one grows. And those 3 or 4 traditionally have been of different species. So you will not really know what you're drinking, and you will, in a sense, not, I won't say not care, but in traditional usage, there isn't a distinction made very strongly at all between the species within that category, that broad category of noble or two-day. What does probably explain that is that the success of each of the different species probably differs by soil, rainfall and location. And probably you get more and more pure stands of Kava in different locations. However, within Fiji, the market I know best, Kava is Kava is Kava. It is all noble and it is all sought after as good Fijian noble Kava, but the species is not so well known. As a little aside, so the short answer to your question is cannot tell. As a little aside, Fiji Kava is pretty interested in this. And we are very interested not only to pursue the right Kava species, and we've got tissue culture in place just recently so that we can propagate single species and know that when we take it out and put it in the ground, we'll get back that species, but also looking to see about those chemotypes or the HPLC profiles I mentioned. However, we know from the literature that we are alone a little bit in that. There is no good literature on the Kava lactone profile efficacy. So I'm afraid we're underdeveloped in that question, Nigel.
Is there a kind of recommendable product or something that you would say is probably the best quality today?
The answer to that will appear self-serving, so I'll put that out there at first, because Fiji Kava has thought deeply about this question and tried to pursue exactly that. But either way, let me tell you, what I said before, quite well accepted in the literature, including in the European literature around adverse effects, is that noble Kava should be one's first choice. Curiously, and I don't know if you realise this, but amongst the islands, Fiji is the primary drinker and primary market of Kava by a fair margin in terms of volumes of Kava consumed. Fiji, by the luck of the draw, only got noble Kava varieties established. So the only Kava findable in Fiji is noble. In Vanuatu, which has a hugely larger number of Kava varieties, some are noble and some are 2-day. So noble would be the first thing to use. We've also pursued water extraction to our detriment a little bit. It means we can't get very high Kava lactone percentages compared to ethanol extraction. But we have made it a point to ban any ethanol from our whole processing system, and that's easy done. It just means that we will have a different product. Most Kava is not processed beyond that very simple: dig it up, dry it, grind it, and extract it. So in general terms, we're not drifting far away. We're not producing, there are some people experimenting, but we're not producing supercritical CO2 extracts. We're not producing dose rates that are completely unheard of. We are actually, and I'm now talking about the industry, not Fiji Kava, the industry is generally trying to replicate traditional use. So the Kava that is found in capsules, both ours and everyone else's, is a crude powder extract. It is not refined, should I say. It is not fractionated. It is just, let's see what we get.
Yes.
I mentioned before about the uncertainty of our end analysis. We never know what our analysis is until we've done it. And we try our best to get it level by good process, but we also blend to make sure that we get a relatively consistent Kava lactone percentage.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. It's been absolutely fascinating to hear about this, and all the best with Fiji Kava and moving things to this next level that you're doing. It sounds like it's a labour of love, but something of great importance.
It is. Thank you very much, Nigel. Always a pleasure to talk, and I hope we've been able to help people in the industry.